It's my great pleasure to introduce someone who I've interviewed 20 years ago. So 2 decades ago, I met this guy, and he's left an impression on me ever since when I was starting out as a cadet journalist. And here he is. We're back together. Good morning from Australia, Ben Lee.
Good morning. How's it going, man? Good to see you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. You've come a long way since the raging Placid Lake.
In some ways, not much has changed. It's very weird, but yeah.
I was going to say, your appearance hasn't really changed. Your style, your attitude.
My hair's receded a fair bit. Definitely, the hairline's gone back.
I've still got all mine, thankfully.
That's the main thing.
You're embarking on a tour very soon, down under. So, how did this come about? Was it just something that you wanted to do, or did it come up? Like, okay, it's about time I came back home.
I mean, I've always kind of taken the attitude that even though I haven't lived in Australia for many years full time,
Yeah,
I've tried to always relate to my audience there as an Australian artist. And that involves touring 2, 3 times a year, playing gigs. I mean, I'll do I do a bunch of festivals, I'll do little gigs. And to me, it's sort of like not as important what the
yeah,
gigs are as just sort of staying connected to the frequency of the country and the culture and everything, the audiences.
yeah. I've noticed you've done festivals and smaller appearances, as you said. So, why is this tour going to be different? What can Australian audiences expect?
It's funny because in some ways, I don't know, when I look at my career at the moment, which, I'm 3 decades into it,
Yeah,
um, I feel like my sort of confidence or my trust in myself is still growing.
yeah,
And I think similarly with the audience, like I think the audience is kind of still coming around to me. It's funny what a long game it can be to convince people what you're all about or to show them. But I definitely see that there's like, I have a lot of fans that like used to actively dislike my music, but somehow it's like a war of attrition where you like slowly win them over time. It's a very, very long game. But essentially at the moment, I mean, what's going to be really funny about this tour is I started as a joke, basically doing these
really.
like DJ sets on Instagram and doing these funny mashups, and they really just took off. And so I announced this tour, and everyone was like, "My alter ego as a DJ is DJ Dad Bod." They were like, "You got to do DJ sets too." So I was like, "Okay, I'll open for myself. I'll be my support act as the DJ." So that's going to be very unique about this tour.
Yeah, oh, that's fun. I mean, when you got to the pandemic, was that something that kept you going during that period?
Yeah, it was a little bit post actually because it started in 2021.
Right.
I had a couple DJ lessons. We were in Sydney with a family for the year in 21, and Andy Garvey, who's a DJ in Sydney, gave me a few DJ lessons, and I just fell in love with it. I'm not that good, but I bring a songwriter's approach to it, and I think that's what people like about it. That I'm less thinking about keeping everybody dancing as I am like making weird connections between songs.
I love the connection between DJing and musicians and DJing because you can learn from each other. They're not the same like some people probably think.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting now because I do so many different things, and I obviously my essentially I'm a singer songwriter and I play gigs, but then
Yeah,
I've been doing the DJing. Me and my wife run this company putting out podcasts. We have our own podcasts. We put out music.
yeah,
We're sort of hosting events, and but it's all sort of the same thing in a way that it's all based around like creating excellent atmospheres. But then the actual minutia of how you do that is quite different. Like if you're a party host, physically inviting people into a space and trying to
yeah.
curate the evening, that's a different thing to standing on there and getting lost in your own songs. But I try and look for the commonality, which is just trying to give people sort of great experiences.
Yeah, I'm glad that you say that, as well as mention that you're doing so many different things. Noticed over the years, Weirder Together, which is what you do with your wife, the podcast, and just even publishing, is fantastic. Can you explain a little bit about that before we move on, just so people know?
Well,
Because
yeah. So,
there's a
so
lot to it.
yeah. So it's interesting. So basically, Weirder Together is the name of our podcast, but it's also the name of our company.
Yeah,
And we look at it in terms of we have really broad tastes, but it's all around sort of, we always say just making cool shit with cool people. And that can take many forms. It could be like having Amel and the Sniffers play in our living room, or we had Joanna Sternberg play at our house, or we put out a fanzine, or we put out Jello Biafra's podcast, or today we put out Azalea Snail, who's like a lo-fi legend from the 80s and 90s in New York. We put out a new single of hers. It's basically just like a creative production company where we make whatever we're interested in. And in some ways, it's like based on the idea of curation, that there's just so much digital information out there in the world
Yeah.
that much like we each needed when we were growing up, if you were like getting into cool movies or books or music, you needed like an older brother or sister or a cousin to like help you separate the good from the bad. We kind of like to play that role for our broader community and just be like, hey, check this out, check that out, check. And that's really kind of what it's about. So Weirder Together is really just about us turning people on to cool stuff.
Yeah, I just love how you and Meredith are working together, but you're on the same level, but not on the same level sometimes. And how it fuses, I think it's really
Yeah, Ione. You got confused about Meredith Salinger. No,
Oh,
Ione.
sorry, Ione. Sorry, yeah.
People do that. People do that. I just realized I should have this.
My bad.
No, it's fine. It's not uncommon.
Can't believe
yeah.
I did that.
No, it's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, basically, I think the differences between us, it's like a Venn diagram where there's like a really big chunk of stuff that we share, but then our differences are also what keeps it exciting. And there are projects that I'm a little more passionate about or she's more passionate about, but because the marriage is strong and we're interested and we trust each other, we kind of generally eventually understand why the other one's psyched about something.
Yeah, no, it's a really good fusion, I think, and there's no limits, obviously, to Weirder Together.
Yeah, it could sort of be anything. Like I really would love to see us having a festival at some point, where we curate a whole day of music and comedy and all kinds of stuff. Movies, yeah. There's just no. It's just about loving culture essentially and loving things that are offbeat.
Yeah. Party tour, well, there's some really great venues that you're going to be at when you arrive, but I'll focus on one of them in particular that's close to my heart, which is the Avoca Beach Theatre.
Oh, cool.
On the Central Coast, which is where I'm from. And that is
I thought you were going to say the Randwick Ritz for the 20th anniversary of Rage in Placid Lake, the screening we're doing.
Yeah, well, that too, obviously. I have a lot to do with Randwick, but being a Central Coast boy.
Okay, yeah, cool.
I think I told you in an email, I presented that movie when it was being on release, had a small group of like people, film appreciation people, and spoke about it. And from memory, everyone loved it. But yeah, it's a 20th anniversary of the film. But however, firstly, Avoca Beach Theatre. Have you been there before? Like,
I've been to Avoca Beach. I don't think I've ever played there.
Right. How did you book the venue? Was it just something you wanted to do? Or
there's people whose jobs are to do that. That's what a booking agent's for. They come and they go, hey, you've got offers to play all these places. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And we sort of put something together. Yeah. I actually love playing. I mean, look, there's nothing like playing Melbourne on a Friday night. I mean, it's awesome, a packed venue or something, but playing places where they don't get everyone coming.
Right.
There's a deep appreciation for an evening is like, there's something very special about that. Like I remember playing like Milton and, just all these little towns that they're just like, it's almost like the whole town shows up for the gig. So I always am excited to play sort of smaller, more unusual towns and venues.
Will you curate the gig to the size of the venue or the size of the crowd sometimes, or do you just sort of go by the set list?
That's a little hard to say because these ones I'm going to be playing by myself. I have a lot of flexibility. So yeah, I mean, it could be anything. Sometimes someone calls out a song that I haven't thought of, and I'll be like, okay, look it up on your phone and bring the lyrics up here and I'll play it. Or it'll be something that crosses my mind, or just even joking around. Honestly, part of the fun of shows by yourself where you don't have to look after the band or anything is just being able to be silly and tell stories and let it unfold organically. I always like that.
Oh, that's really good to hear. So it might be the same but different every year. Something else could come up, or another story could come up.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever be capable of doing things exactly the same. Like I have some
I don't think
part
so.
it's like not I have sort of a resentment against true professionalism.
Yeah.
I think like there's too many professionals in the entertainment business.
So how has Ben Lee changed in that 30 odd years? I mean, from the recovery, ABC recovery show Ben Lee
Yeah.
to, which has great memories for you, I guess, to now. How has Ben Lee changed? I mean, we'll talk about the music industry itself in a second, how digital and everything's taken over, but how have you changed in that 30 years since ABC recovery to now?
I think in some ways I mean it's funny because as you get older, hopefully you stop trying to be things that you can't be
Right,
and you put more effort into being things that you're brilliant at. You know what I
right.
mean? Like you try and find those things that you can do and the stories you can tell and the songs you can sing that no one else can, and you double down on them, you know? So I think in some ways I've just become more comfortable with who I am and I'm not fighting it as much. I think you sense I was quite an angsty young man. And I think you sense that I was carrying some sort of struggle with myself about who I wanted to be. And I
Okay,
don't feel that as much anymore.
okay. I know that there was a exhibition called Unpopular, and it started late last year, finished earlier this year, and it covered all the Somersault Festival, the 90s, and you were part of that, obviously. That Somersault Festival.
And I'm stubborn. And those are the two things you need in an athletic sense to be a great member of pop culture, you know? But so even that, like my own confidence and competitiveness, letting it be healthy and letting it be just authentic to who I am and not squashing it down or not amping it up too much. And then, a lot of it is actually about the ways I haven't changed. I think what I essentially want to do with a song is create a sweet, memorable, romantic, moving moment that gives the audience hope in some
Right.
little moment. And it's sort of always been like that.
We're all in this together was like almost an unofficial anthem for the pandemic down under. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I heard it a lot on the radio.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great example of, as an artist, you tend to, you're putting out a record and say, oh, the single's coming out. How did it do? Like you speak in past tense about it as if the
So,
story of the song is written within the 6 weeks after it comes out. And especially now with TikTok, songs can get discovered 2 decades after they come out. So I think part of the fun of being a musician now is knowing that the journey of a song never ends.
mm,
And something like the way people could latch onto it during a global crisis
mm,
is something you would never anticipate when you write a song, So it
right.
gave me a lot, almost just like more faith that you never know what's around the corner.
You clearly embraced technology. How did you find the switch over? When it was all coming through, were you happy to keep on going the way you're going, or did you immediately, embrace all the tech that's available now to release music, to record music, and everything?
I think I'm mixed. Like, it's funny. I'm not actually that early on with technology as far as
Sure.
adopting new things, but when I do them, I commit to them. So like, I did make one of the first kind of alternative records in Pro Tools, in Breathing Tornadoes in '99.
Yeah.
That was unusual. I didn't really know any bands that were making records in Pro Tools, but it seemed it was cheaper and it was fun. And then as far as like TikTok or something, like I didn't join that right away because I don't like to join things right away because you never know if they could fizzle and you could have wasted
Yeah.
a whole lot of energy. So I do
Yeah.
like to watch things play out and go, is this actually a viable means of communication or is it a useful tool? And
Yeah.
if it is, I go for it. And now it's sort of like where the party's at. So it's sort of just the part of me that wants to be in the conversation. You go where the conversation's happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. If something comes out, you've got to let it flow for a bit, let it pan out to see how it develops, because there's also going to be that upgrade as well from when it first came out and improvements. And TikTok
Exactly.
certainly certainly for me, I didn't want to embrace it first because I just thought I'd let it go, like I said, and here we are now where it's probably one of the number one, if not the number one social media platform.
Yeah, exactly.
Unpopular, the exhibition that was at the Powerhouse Museum late last year and early this year, you were part of that. There was pictures of you, there was footage of you in recovery, interviewing people behind the scenes in Somersault. What do you remember about that? What do you remember about that gig?
Oh, it was really huge for me because like all those bands, like the Beastie Boys, Sonic Youth, Beck, Pavement, they were the bands, they were sort of the big brothers to Noise Addict, to my band. They ushered us into the industry, and they were our favorite bands. And that was this rare moment where everyone was all together, and in Australia. I mean, it was just so cool. So I just remember thinking, I don't know, just Pav. You know, I know a lot of people. He rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and people didn't get paid, and he's had all these issues over there, but in the sense of like what me and Ione are doing with Weirder together, there's so much influence from people like Pav and Mike D and Thurston Moore, people who really tried to create moments where you'd bring things together and turn people onto stuff. So it was very formative for me.
How many guitars do you own? And have you still got any original guitars from starting out?
Yeah, I've got, I can show you one. I've got, let me see.
I'd love to see one, yeah.
4, 5, 6. I've got like 7 or 8 guitars, but here, I'll grab one. This is actually like my first guitar, basically.
Wow.
Like the song "My Guitar" off Grandpa Wood that was written about this. This is what I'd come home. Oh, the strings were a bit messed up, but this is what I would come home and play and write all my early music on. So yeah.
Fantastic. That's really cool, Ben. Thank you for showing me that.
Yeah, no worries.
And to wrap it up, a couple more questions. How do you find writing music now? Are you still getting fresh ideas? Or do you find it harder? Do you have to take notes? Is it any different at all?
Yeah, I think I don't. When I was younger, I would come home every day from school and write at least a song, at least one song.
Wow. Okay.
And it was like a fountain. I just wanted to keep it running all the time. Now I'll go through phases, and I don't get stressed if I don't write for a few months because I know it'll come again. So, I've got a new album that's getting ready to get scheduled and come out, and I'm always collaborating. I just did, me and Gab from Japanese Wallpaper just spent a day in the studio together. I'll do stuff with Georgia Mack or Nina Geraci or, all kinds of people, and just get in the studio, make stuff. And all the time, I think I'm more comfortable with real collaboration than I used to be. I think I used to feel more protective of my creative process and didn't want to like share it or share credit or something. And now I kind of love sharing it. Yeah, but it's kind of the same. It's still like you're sitting there with a guitar or a piano or a mic and just going like, anyone got a cool idea? Yeah.
Speaking of collaborations, the VMAs were just on at the time of recording this. A lot of new artists are just really going forth. What do you think? Any new artists that have impressed you? People that are around at the moment you like that you can recommend?
Yeah, I mean, tons. Like, I mean, out of Australia, Mole Rat, obviously Amel and the Sniffers, Nina Geraci, George Mack, they're big ones for me. From the States, there's a songwriter here called Johanna Samuels who's really good. There's a guy called King Tuff who's a really great songwriter and producer. And I mean, it's hard to think off the top of my head. I also like a lot of kind of electronic music and stuff that is more atmospheric and weirder, but I'm always discovering things. I think now they say there's 2 types of people. There's the let me put on my favorite song, and there's let me put on something I've never heard before. I'm more that person.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of both. I still love my retro music, but I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Joanna Samuels. She's someone who's been on my radar.
Oh, cool. Yeah. We've written a song called Sunset Marquee that we've just got to finish and we want to put out. It's really nice.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Have you got a book in you? Books
at some point. Well, now my wife's writing one. So she did a deal and sold her memoir at the end of earlier this year. Now she's writing it. And so
Yeah.
our house is very consumed with her book. So, and she's 8 years older than me. So I figure like maybe in 8 years I'll write a book.
Well, I only would have definitely stories to tell, and I look forward to
Oh
maybe
yeah.
talking to her about it someday for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
And finally, acting. We're talking about Raging Placid Lake and the screening that's happening at the Ritz Cinema in Sydney. Would you ever pursue acting seriously again if a role was
I mean,
offered to you?
it's sort of like actually something got offered to me recently, but it didn't feel
Oh,
like I'm so I'm so involved in so many projects that the idea of giving myself to something, it has to really excite me.
yeah.
Um, and it just didn't feel like sort of like a meaty enough thing for me to sink my teeth into. But I would absolutely do it. But I look at it the same way I look at any other collaboration. It's just about the chemistry of the people, the idea. I don't have many rules about where my career is going to go. I just have to be inspired by what's being offered.
Even if it was a short film, a musical,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Yeah, I'm open to all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of things that I've been every now and then something or someone will inquire and I'll be like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And then other times I'm like, it doesn't feel right for me.
well, the salute of the jugger, a sequel,
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. The sequel. We'll do the sequel.
You've all grown up in the
Yeah,
apocalyptic world.
exactly.
Thanks very much for your time,
Cool,
man.
mate. Of course.
Scott,
Good to chat to you. Talk
Scott,
to you in
look forward